Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today I'm honored to be with the scholars from the edge of time, Nicholas Diak and Michele Brittany. Greetings and welcome, scholars.
Greetings, Hercules. How are you this evening?
I'm doing fantastic, and I'm looking forward to the wisdom that you have to impart on the myths of social media.
Oh, yes, we have lots of wisdoms to share. But before we do that, my cohort, Nick, how are you doing?
I'm doing.
Besides having a cat in your nose.
I have a cat in my face. I'm doing pretty good. It's monsoon season here in Phoenix now, and today, last night, and the day before have been some storms coming through. So if we all of a sudden die, it's because Zeus-like thunderbolts came down and got us. It is like super windy.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that you're both safe and continue to be safe. We had astounding thunderstorms too recently. It
Yeah.
sounded like bombs were being dropped in our neighborhood. Initially, I thought it was a bomb. It was just so loud and cracked so impressively, but then it was just thunderstorms.
Oh man, last night, I think it was last night, I think I heard the loudest thunder crack I'd ever heard. It was so loud, like the sky snapped.
Yeah, it was very close to us. We had monsoon blowing through north and headed southward. So we were kind of in the eye of it last night. Thankfully, we didn't have any sort of damage whatsoever. Thank goodness.
But we went out for a walk earlier today, so lots of blown over branches and trees and stuff.
Yeah. Okay, baby. Oh, she's getting settled. So, and this is, of course, Cecily, our podcast kitty cat, who has to be on every time.
She does.
It's in her contract, so we can't, we have to respect that.
That's right. We were not aware that she had a contract. Now we do. But
We should have read the fine paw print.
yeah. She's doing her part to earn her keep.
She added in her own claws.
Oh man, that's really bad.
I thought those are good.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, she says move along.
So, so tonight, for the movie we're talking about is She is Conan.
Yeah, I first learned of from you and that I sought out and actually found, and now it is in my possession. I've watched some of it, so I look forward to hearing your thoughts.
We have thoughts. We watched it and we have thoughts. So let us go. Plot. She is Conan plot. An unnamed elderly lady is brought forth by an anthropomorphic dog named Rainer to the cavernous throne room of Conan. That's Conan with 3 N's too at the end. An extremely old barbarian queen. Conan and Rainer begin to reflect and commentate on Conan's life. In her youth, Conan and her mother were captured by a barbarian queen named Sonia and her followers. Sonia with an A, murders Conan's mother by splitting her in half lengthwise with her sword. In order to live, Conan is forced to cannibalize her dead mother, vengeance swelling up inside her. Rainer informs Conan that Sonia disappears once a month to be with her secret lover, and that a plant that grows in the barbarian camp is poisonous. Conan uses this opportunity to poison the barbarians' drink and then beheads them all. Rainer promises Conan to see a future version of herself. Conan, age 25, appears and kills young Conan. Conan at 25 seeks out to finally extract her vengeance against Sonia, who she finds in a lake. A car drives out of the mists and crashes into Sonia, and Conan, age 35, emerges from its boot. Conan, age 35, and Sonia are actually lovers. Conan 35 kills Conan 25, there's some math here, with Sonia, and they have their memories wiped out, so they are flung into the future of 1998, where Conan is a stunt driver and lives in happiness with Sonia. However, their happiness is short-lived, as a car surfing stunt gone awry nearly decapitates Conan, 35. Raynor, who has missed Conann, interjects himself back into her life, informing Conann she is actually dead. Conann pleads to live, and that death should take Sonya instead. Conann's sword flies out of her hand and impales Sonya against their car. As Conann 35 weeps, Conann 45 appears and stabs her. Conann 45 is in the military in a war-torn Europe. She is sadistically gunning down capitalists and stabbing those that get too close to her emotionally. But Conann 45 is not long for the world, as Conann 55 erupts from her back, sprouting wings like an angel. Conann 55 is an extremely successful business person and wants to end her life wants to end her time on Earth on her terms by having her body cooked and prepared while she's still conscious and served to 6 artists of different mediums, each who will inherit her monies, but only if they consume her. 5 of the artists are totally on board, but a 6th isn't on board and leaves. But she comes back and guns down everyone, and after they have all feasted on Conann. Returning to the present, the eldest Conann still doesn't reclaim all her memories, despite Raynor, who all along had been documenting everything with his portable camera. The end.
I saw more of the movie than I thought I saw.
So, Michele, high level, what are your thoughts, impressions on Conann? She is Conann.
I mean, I went in without any real expectations. I really didn't know anything about it and just wanted to be surprised. I did read a little bit about the director, and now I found out that he had a manifesto, and I was like, uh-oh. And
as soon as manifestos enter the
yes,
arena, things go out the door.
You know, I know this is, you know, auteur, independent filmmaker, probably going to be a very interesting take on Conann. And it definitely was. And surprisingly, I really enjoyed this film. I have a lot of thoughts about it, but generally, yeah, definitely really like this movie a lot. And I'm sure we'll talk more specifics in a bit. What about you? High level.
It's a little let down. And I think it's more of a case of it's me, not you type scenario. I was pumped for this movie. This is probably the most current film that we've talked about on this program. Everything else has been really, really old.
Came out last year.
I saw that it was, you know, a little on the surreal side, a gender swap take on Conann that was experimental in nature. I went in blind, but I was pumped. I already put this movie on a pedestal. And I'll be honest, after we were done watching it, I was stupefied. And perplexed. I definitely appreciate the film. I think I went in with expectations of, you know, I like a good chunk of surreal and experimental cinema. Guy Madden, David Lynch, and Von Trier. I thought I was going to get some like Von Trier, Europa vibes from the film, and it turned out not to be that at all. This is an LGBTQ plus film, and I'm not that audience, so I think that's what makes me sad, is a good chunk of it went over me and I just couldn't grasp it. I was able to grasp a lot of other stuff, but I feel like its main purpose I could not grab, and that made me kind of feel that the movie was a little inaccessible. So I was bummed. And then again, that's more of a bummed at me rather than the film, I think.
Okay.
So where do we start? Because as I said, the plot was as precise as I could give it. That's just a play-by-play of how scenes go. What actually happens in the movie is, holy crap, there's a lot that goes on in this film.
I think the most accessible part of the film is probably this idea of a chronological telling of Conann's life.
I think it's a good place to start because this is something you usually bring up, and that's the hero's journey.
Mhm.
And this is something I thought of while reflecting on the film, is that there actually isn't a hero's journey in this film. And I see that there is at a like high macro level, but this is a movie where the future self keeps killing the past self. Every iteration of Conan, a future self appears to kill the past self. And because the past self is now dead, where's the in between of the past self and then future self? It just like a future Conan just like exists. So it's like the in between, those 10 years in between, they're not there per se. And those are like during like a Joseph Campbell or whatever, hero's journey. That's when you have your adventures, where a character grows, they go on their quests, and start A to end point B, all this stuff happens, they're a changed person. I feel like in this we skip to the changed person, changed person, changed person every time without the in-betweens, because the changed person kills the prior self. So I mean, the type of film it is, you couldn't add in all that hero's journey stuff anyway, but because it would be 5 hours long. But the fact that the future self kills the past self, to me, unless you get into weird time traveling and stuff like that, which I don't think this film is literally supposed to be time traveling. It's the future self kills prior self figuratively and literally. And of course, if you kill your past self, if you get into that weird time travel stuff, that would kill the future self. Taking all that out, I'm going that route of it. Just the future self exists, kills the past self, repeat process. Does that make sense? It's kind of weird.
Oh, yeah, it does. I think for me, even though it's not a traditional hero's journey, I think we still do see snippets, vignettes of that journey at different pinpoints of Conan's life, which I think kind of mimics Rainier's in paparazzi type of approach to being a documenter of Conan's life. So I think in that respect, I think we're still getting some of that hero's journey, but definitely not in a traditional Joseph Campbell's structure. I think it's like 14 points or something like that. We definitely don't get that, but we're left with a lack of structure so that we can, I think, interject our own thoughts and reflect on the different stages of her life, because there are very definite delineations of her life. Like when she's 25, she is, okay, let me back up. When she's 15, she is an adolescent. She's a slave. She's impressionable. She, has to ingest her mother, otherwise she is going to be killed. Then her 25 age manifestation is definitely a young woman, angry at the world, a true barbarian in every sense, has the paint across her eyes, carrying the broadswords and the dagger, and she's got the armor. She's in prime, to explore that barbarism, that violence, that hatred that she has, that started with the death of her mother when she was 15. And then when she goes into her 35 age, she's definitely has found love, and she wants to forget about everything in the past. And Rainier actually says, if that's what you really want, I will give that to you. And her memory is gone, as is Sanya's. And so they're together. They seem to be happy. She's a stunt person. She's having lots of fun. She's you know, carefree. I would almost equate it to probably, you know, like the 60s or 70s type of kind of free thought and things like that. And then,
slight echoes of Eternal Sunshine on the Spotless Mind a little bit.
okay, yeah, I mean, I watched the movie, but it's been so long
It's
since
been
I
20
thought
years on that
yeah.
one.
And then, you know, you fast forward another 10 and she's 45. She's become really hardened by the fact that, you know, she chose her life over her lover's life, and then she's ultimately killed by her 45-year-old person. So that's kind of interesting, because then that kind of harkens back to 30s, you know, war ravaged Europe, and very night porter-ish type of aesthetics and things like that. So now you're getting into, you know, a woman that's now in her 40s. She's starting to think about, you know, a lot of my life is behind me. I don't have as much ahead of me and things like that. And then by the time the 55 person comes along, she's, you know, got the experience. She's become successful. She's a patron of the arts. And she wants to make a change. She doesn't want to go the way of violence and war and barbarism, but you know, that's why she's like, I'd rather give freely of my body, nourish other people, almost like mentoring. So there's a lot of symbolism in this film. And then of course, you know, that transpires, and that doesn't work out because of course, you know, this one person that left the party comes back and kills everybody. You know, and then you have the very end, the queen, you know, Conann has become the queen. So, you know, I'm also curious, like what happened between 55 and now she's the queen of the underworld or purgatory, something very dreamy. And Rainier is still there with her, still documenting, still like kind of directing her as he's done her entire life. So, I mean, it's not a traditional hero's journey, but I think that there is definitely a journey there. It's not meant to be a traditional one.
I agree with everything. It's just where it gets mixed up is if this was a normal film, the character would become itself every time. It would be the same person. But because in this film, the future self keeps killing the past self and is a different person. It's a different actress each time. That actress may be even a different race each time. That's where it gets muddled for me. Where if this was, I mean, muddled is just, maybe it's the wrong term. It's subverting, yeah, the hero's journey. If the future self didn't keep killing the past self, it'd be your normal linear journey, start to end. Here's all your adventures. You could take a snapshot in each life, but it's that fact that you keep killing your past, and which I think is, there's a lot of themes in the film, and some of them I can't grasp, but that killing your past or burying your past or putting your past literally behind you by cutting it off is the one theme I do see. I think of if you remember the movie History of Violence, where Viggo Mortensen's character, you know, he plays an ex-gangster who's now like an owner of a diner, but you know, he killed his past self. He's like, I took my gangster self to the desert and I killed him. I mean, you know, it's a metaphorical thing, but that scene in that movie made me think of She Is Conann, that she's actually literally doing it.
Yeah, I mean, but I still think there's a symbolism, because I think that symbolically, at least, I think that you either, if you want to be somebody else, you have to in some way bury or kill that past. And I think that this again is, you know, symbolic.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of symbols in this film.
I think what might be helpful is to read the director. His name, by the way, is Bertrand Mendicio. Mendicio. His manifesto, which he wrote back in 2012, is called incoherence. To be incoherent means to have faith in cinema. It means to have a romantic approach, unformatted, free, disturbed and dreamlike, cinegenic, and epic narration. And I think if you think about his manifesto, I think that the movie hits on all these points, even though at the same time, there's a lot of homages to a lot of films that we've watched in the past, as well as, you know, drawing on Conan the Barbarian, Red Sonja, and many, many others.
Not just films, but film techniques.
Mhm.
One of the things I thought of while watching it was Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula. We watched a Red Letter Media, I think, on that many months ago, where that movie they interpreted as like a love letter to old style filmmaking of using, you know, forced perspective and backlit things and stuff like that. And since this movie, if I recall, was not green screened or computer effects, it was all practical. It had that Dracula feel to it, of which works very well in Dracula, to add that kind of supernatural, surreal element to it, and that's definitely harnessed in here for this movie. There's some cool, that the movie is cool as hell to look at. It's sometimes black and white, sometimes color, which I'm a sucker for. Again, like Vern Trier's Europa. There's glitter everywhere. There's glitter bombs going off. I'm cool with that. There's like rear projections behind characters looking at screens of what's going on the scene at the same time. I dig the craftsmanship for sure.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of nods to early French cinema. This is a French film. I think it's Katie Reif. She wrote a review of the movie over on RogerEbert.com. And this is the director's third film. His first was The Wild Boys in 2017, After Blue, Dirty Paradise from 2021. And of course, She is Conan, which she felt this is, you know, like his best film out of the three. And she described it as poetic devotion. And she cued into three kind of elements to the film. Poetic dialogue, of which there is a lot. There's definitely a very poetic cadence to the dialogue. It's beautifully written, actually. And Rainier gets a lot of great lines. And I think she even mentions that in her review. The second is iconoclastic, gender bending. And then, of course, what you mentioned was glitter. There is glitter galore, as well as crazy costumes like women in gorilla outfits with projections out of the chest area. You know, and these are the barbarians. This is the first, you know, stage of Conan's life.
There's definitely the hand of Rocky Horror operating in the background of some of this, for sure.
Yeah, and I would add, just like you said, there's so many aesthetics and images. They're really gorgeously done. A lot of technique went in to creating this film. I really like how I feel, in addition to the journey from barbarianism at the beginning, and kind of that very
ends on civilization, as she's the highfalutin artist type.
Yeah, so to me, I feel like it goes from a low art to a high art, you know, what they call high art, you know, in her representation when she's 55. The other thing is, like you were saying about the color and the black and white, even in the color, it goes from very subtle, subdued colors to very saturated colors very quickly, and it bounces between all sorts of colors, but not necessarily psychedelic. like you would think from 60s films, but definitely playing with those kind of themes and those ideas.
No, this is definitely a post 60s, 70s film. This is
Mhm.
very much new wave with a hint of glam metal. Definitely more new wave and the punk aesthetic that goes with new wave. I
Mhm.
remember I was freaking out that I saw a picture of Nina Hagen in one of the scenes, but the way that some of the characters are dressed with like face paint and stuff on, it is extremely 80s new wave, that androgynous look to a lot of the stuff, and plus a lot of 80s cinema. There's a big hint, I would say, like The Warriors and Streets of Fire that's a little bit going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, definitely.
When you said the movie starts off as low art, my favorite part of the movie actually is probably the first third, which is Conann 15 and Conann 25. But the way it looks like an Italian post-apocalyptic film from the early 80s, because it's like, it is barbarian times, yet there's like ruins that are like contemporary, and there's a little bit of like, there's a car that comes out of nowhere and other stuff. So it has that like Escape from Bronx 99, New Barbarians kind of feel to it.
Yeah, and I would add that the recent Hercules film that we saw that was set in the underworld with a lot of fog. I can't remember the name of the one.
Hercules in Haunted World?
Yes, that I was reminded of that, as well as Mario Bava's Planet of the Vampires, with a lot of very atmospheric, particularly when it was Conann 25.
Yeah, a lot of fog.
Yeah.
Not like Mario Bava with the Technicolors, but Mario
No.
Bava with the smoke machines.
Smoke machines and just that kind of otherworldly, there's a mysticism, there's a magic to it. I would also add that there's also a lot of gore, and well, there's gore, particularly with the woman
Different
that's,
type of gore.
yeah, that's cut in half. And then
That was gruesome.
yeah, and even kind of, when she is 55 and she is prepared, cooked, it's actually kind of, I hate to say it, but tastefully done.
Tastefully.
I know, I felt really bad about
You were
that.
calling me out on my bad cat puns earlier, and you're talking about
I know.
tastefully cannibal scene.
I know. But it, even though it's done well, it unhinges you. And it's like I was even thinking, like, just now, Delicatessen. I forgot who directed that.
Same guy did Amelie. Jean Jeanette something.
Okay. So
The
anyway,
guy behind Amelie.
yeah. But there's a lot of that. And then there is quite a bit of blood, and of course it is highly sexualized.
But there's not a lot of nudity.
No,
There's like almost no nudity except for a prosthetic boobie on a doggy and the doggy's wee wee. But I want to go back real quick to the gore stuff.
Okay.
Because the movie is gory, but not in the way you would normally. This isn't like Evil Dead or anything like that. It's one, there's way too much cannibalism in this film. I went into this film expecting zero cannibalism. There is so much cannibalism in this film.
Yes, on the cannibalism meter, this is probably about an 8 out of 10.
Yeah,
but it's not like Cannibal
Holocaust.
Now, you've watched that, I haven't, so he would know.
There's something, my theory, my personal theory on cannibalism, for some odd reason, if it's a zombie film and zombies are eating people, I'm okay with that. But when you turn it into a cannibal film and people are eating people, there's that unnerving part of it, because zombies are fantasy, but like people aren't fantasy. People are real, and they're making that conscious decision. Like we see in this movie, we're going to eat this person. And that just adds this undercut of grotesquerie or something to it.
Yeah, and what adds to it is that in order for these artists to get her empire, her money, they have to eat her completely. And it kind of reminds me of us, in the US, and how very finicky we are when it comes to knowing about our food sources. And that, like, here, we won't have pictures of nice little Bambi up on the menu. If anything, we try very hard to separate, so that way we don't have to know exactly where our food comes from. And yet, in this film, that is definitely unsettling, because it's her.
And she's looking at you. She's also
Yes.
conscious during this.
Yes.
Through the entire ordeal, which
Yeah.
adds a weird, but back to here's the concurrent thing. People are eating people. But when it comes to blood, yeah, there is like one like vertical split in half type scene. Most of the blood is from vomiting. There is a lot, usually you see a movie, someone gets stabbed, and they go, ugh, and blood comes out. That is
true.
how most of the blood appears in this film, is people spitting or regurgitating blood. So someone who is a bit more informed on this than I am, I can only just point out the imagery of eating flesh and then spitting out blood. There's something there. I don't know what it is, but that is a big theme of this film. The eating part, I do get, as as gross it is, like in real life, like when a crab sheds its exoskeleton, I'll turn around and eat it because it needs its nutrients. And Conann is basically a crab. She's got to eat her prior body or eat her mom or something to get those, I guess, nutrients. She even refers to her prior bodies as like not a cocoon, but like a chrysalis.
Crystallis?
Yes. So there is that part of it, I think. But yeah, then concurrently, so many people, they get poisoned, they get stabbed, they get shot. All their deaths are blood coming out. It's like that scene from Stand By Me, the pie eating scene, but blood.
Oh yeah, when everybody starts vomiting.
Yeah, so there's something there. I don't know what that something is, but I think there's something there.
I'm thinking that one of the things that I was hoping we touch on is kind of some of the homages. I mean, we've done a little bit of that, but wondered what other films that you thought of as you're watching this one.
To not just homages, but there's Easter eggs in this film. This is one of those films that you definitely have to go back and rewatch because of it's very impenetrable. And that's probably one of my reservations on my first watches. It is a very impenetrable film. When you brought back those 3 points, like first point is how poetic it is. I'm not good at poetry. But it invites more watches because I saw, like, I'm going to call them Easter eggs in the film. There's a lot of stuff hidden in there, be it homage or something on the scene. Like there in the,
For example,
like in the 80s scene, not 80s, 90s scene, although it looks like the 80s, when Sonia is coming back, there's graffiti on the wall that says Sonia is back. There's weird stuff like that in the film that it begs you to look for Easter eggs, references, meta stuff, movie references, and so on. And I definitely only caught a couple of them.
Yeah, I thought about in addition to the mention earlier of Night Porter associated with Conann, what, 45, I think?
Yeah, if y'all
45.
haven't seen Night Porter, it's a French film. It's very famous for a scene where Isabella Hubert? No.
I thought
Charlotte
it was
Rampling.
Mhm.
Charlotte Rampling is dancing in a concentration camp. She's wearing like Schutzstaffel overalls and has like a cap on, and that's she's holding her hands up to her breast to censor them, but that's like the iconic image of that film, and that's definitely recreated in this one.
Yeah. The other one that I thought about was actually Excalibur, because there's a lot of, I'm gonna say some glitter, but definitely very dreamlike and magical.
Like a lot of reflected light on things.
Yeah, but it's also there's a sense of forbidden to it. Whereas this film is definitely more free and experimenting and kind of, you know, exploring what the options are and bending those options at the same time. I also thought a lot of just more generally,
Whoa, hold on.
yes.
There's one movie I have down, and I'm shocked that you did not bring up. One of your all-time favorite films.
Lady Hawk?
No, but I could see a little bit of Lady Hawk there on the romance and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
'cause there's-
What's another 80s film that has swords in it that you love?
Highlander.
Highlander. There is Highlander in this film, especially I'd say Highlander with Adrian Paul, where modern day setting with people that have been alive way in the past. They have swords. There's a decapitation scene. That there's a shade of Highlander here, and dare I say that G2 we watched that was way better than it should have been. But
So
there's a little bit of Highlander in
the
here.
fact that you're bringing up that, now you might be able to think about Conan's journey as well as the Highlander journey.
But he doesn't kill himself.
He doesn't.
That's the only thing that throws me off is the killing of himself.
I think you have to think of it symbolically, not literally. Even though we see a literal portrayal of the death of the prior for the current, I think you still have to look at it as more symbolic.
I can grasp that, but I can also grasp that you're killing your. It's Back to the Future right here. I don't want to go there, but Marty McFly, we're disappearing from this photo. What happened? Well, I kind of killed myself in the past. Again, this is not a time travel movie per se. It's more of a flashback. It's all flashback. It's if anything, it maybe has like a little, because of black and white and color, a little bit of Memento, just a little. Because
interesting.
Because Memento he keeps losing his memories, and in this film she's trying to get her memories back.
Yeah,
maybe there's a stronger connection there than I thought. Okay, so maybe a little bit more Memento than that.
We haven't really touched on the fact its namesake, which is Conann the Barbarian. Obviously we think of the Arnie movie, but it's also based on Robert E. Howard's stories and comics and things like that. I think that
comics. In the comics, there's a story, I don't remember where in the canon it was, where Conan was going down a river in the underworld, and he had to fight his youngest self and his older self to the death. So he was challenged by these different parts in his life. And in terms of the dog with the camera, who's the chronicler, Conan always had a chronicler. In the Robert E. Howard, it was Noah Prince in the days before the sinking of Atlantis and the rise of the sons of Arius, blah, blah, blah. And in the movie was Akiro, the wizard. And Conan was played by different people, and each time they tried to restart the franchise, trying to kill the old franchise. But where I identified with some parts of the movie that you're describing is I'm in my 60s now. And I've lived a very full and creative life, and I've been different people throughout my life. I've been, one person for 10 years, another person for 15 years, and these selves were radically different. So at some point I had to get rid of the old self. The old self was no longer who I was, and I developed into a new self. So you can say that that's killing, selves before, because I'm nothing like some of the selves I've been in the past. And recently someone turned me on to an Eminem video. Eminem is making a comeback, and he brought back a character of his called Slim Shady. I'm not familiar with Eminem, But
I am. I grew up in the late 90s with Eminem. I know what you're talking about.
he had Slim Shady's back and made an album with songs, and they're also full of Easter eggs and things like that. Some of them metaphysical or occult. Those I could make out. I couldn't make out the cultural ones. But he too is dealing with what do you do with older parts of yourself that you thought you'd left behind. And it's not clear um, who's going to win, because if you play the song backwards, it tells one story. If you play it forward, it tells another story. But the whole challenge is what do you do with a piece of you that no longer fits into this world, but was very successful in the world where it came from? And there's fighting, including superhero fighting, and all sorts of stuff going on. They have lots of homages and Easter eggs as well, but that becomes a central question. And how I interpreted all these different changes is these are different periods in the person's life, and how much of your old life do you hold on to, and at which point do you start letting it go and just leave it behind in the past and move on to the future. So that's how I interpreted the film.
Yeah.
But
That,
the difference is, Hercules, you have not yet served yourself on a platter to your closest artists and cohorts yet. Please don't do that.
No, I'm not going to do that, but symbolically, I've done that. Symbolically, I've shared of myself in whatever period in life I lived in whatever way I could. Like I was a therapist for a while, believe it or not. And so there you're giving of yourself and people are consuming your, whatever you're sharing, your art, your understandings, or, whatever. So that's a form of cannibalism, I guess, because you're taking in human experiences that a person has and you're consuming them in a way and you're doing something with them once they become part of you. And then another people I've been, I didn't do that so much. So
I think that's a great observation because, we look at the people around us and, particularly now with social media and pop culture being so readily available, we now have more, role models and people to look at and perhaps emulate, and take on new characteristics and let go of other ones, so that we do end up changing over time. And I think that that's part of our own journeys, right?
There's that adage, compare yourself today to what you were yesterday. And the idea is, today you're a different person than yesterday, be it positive for the change. What to me again in this movie that throws the little wrench in it is how can you compare yourself to yesterday when you killed yourself yesterday? I want to bring up the one thing I think I can meaningfully academic contribute to this dialogue. And I'm going to pull out the good old bag of tricks of Michele in the Carnivalesque, because this is a carnival film. This movie is grotesquerie. It made me think of when I talked about Vinegar Teeth. And I think I talked about Vinegar Teeth on this show, but I gave a couple presentations on it where a Lovecraftian alien comes down and eats people and stuff like that. But the idea of being in the carnival, all rules are out the door, up is down, poor or rich, you indulge in food. It's a way to, poke fun at civilization and whatnot. And of course, this film is, without the rules and civilization, you get barbarianism. And so through the carnival of this film, the end result is kind of this acts of cannibalism that turn into acts of barbarianism. So I need to brush up on my Bakhtin for that, but there was that big cloud of the carnivalesque that I think hung over this film that I think would be a deeper reading through that lens would be like, oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, and I would add to that, kind of the spectacle, the fact that Renier is, a paparazzi, he's a chronicler. He is kind of keeping Conann's life through his images, and at one point we actually he whips out some images that he's taken in various parts of her life. So I
But
think that
but he also wants validation of those pictures. He
Mhm,
keeps
he
acting
does.
as a chronicler, but at the very end with the other artists, Rainier also wants that a little bit of validation that he wasn't just a paparazzi taking photos in
Mhm.
time, that there's an actual artistic merit to his photos. And Conann does not recognize that. She actually turns him down on that, which kind of bums him out. We have
Yeah.
got like 4 cats in here. They're like
Yeah.
all want cameos. So, but you know, that need of something, Conann's need to get the memories back that she purposely killed, and Rainier, who has all the memories. Rainier's the one that's bringing these women to. I'm assuming these other women that Rainier brings in are other Conans at other ages, and also photos and stuff. Rainier has the keys to everything, but the Conann cannot open up that door despite it all being there. And even like the ending shots of the film is this a panning shot of relics and trinkets from all of Conan's adventures. In fact, one of the other Easter eggs I noticed was the Conan 55, when they're in like the dining room, like on the wall is a set of armor from the age of Conan 15, you know.
Yeah, and we didn't talk too much about it, but with Conann, I mean, she is Conann. There's definitely elements of that kind of epic storytelling. Even though it is not in a traditional sense, we definitely get the sense that there's an epic ness, there's a saga. Obviously through the various vignettes, we're getting a saga presented to us. Obviously we have swords, we've got some really nice weaponry, and there are not a lot of a tremendous amount of fighting, like you would have gotten in like Conann the Barbarian. But they do feature at each killing, for sure. And then one of the other things is that that we've seen in like Conann the Barbarian, Beastmaster, the hero seems to always have like an animal sidekick or companion. And so I felt like, again, in this film, we have Rainier as, and it's interesting. One of the things I read, they described that character as a hellhound, which is interesting.
Like a one-headed Cerberus or something.
Yeah, yeah. That
Chihuahuas were psychopomp dogs also. So dogs, like cats in some instances, were considered to be underworld creatures or psychopompic creatures that usher you to the underworld or from the underworld.
Yeah, so I actually thought that was rather interesting, and kind of makes another, connection to this journey, and the underworld, and coming to terms. I even thought about at her as she's reflecting. You have Queen Conann, and it's almost felt like a weighing of the hearts with the ancient Egyptians. And did she live the life that was in keeping with expectations, or did her heart, which is another thing, heart featured very strongly throughout this film,
usually associated with the cannibal parts too, but
Yes.
there's a
yeah. But I even got that kind of sense that there's a weighing, like whatever your belief might be, that there is some reflection on your life, and whether you were a good person or a bad person, and where were you going after that.
might have been a bad person in this
Might
one.
might have been.
I'm gonna go back to namesake real quick.
Okay.
So as y'all know, I've been knee deep in Emmanuel studies. In fact, that's kind of the big thing going on. Michele's gotten her mummy essays back. She's been editing those. I've gotten Emmanuel essays back. I've been writing on those. So of course, the spelling of Conann with that extra N seems innocuous, but to me, that's kind of, I think it's a big deal. Both on when I think of Emmanuel, I think of, we watched the Black Emmanuel films, and that's Emmanuel with one M instead of two M's. And they're, they're kind of the same character, kind of not. They're spelled differently because of legal reasons, but they're kind of go together, kind of not. And that's a lot for a lot of exploitation films, tweak the names a bit so you can kind of cash in on something. And it's a way to like differentiate two things, but also have them be the same at the same time. Very, I'm guessing, Berardian simulacrum type thing. I'm going to play a super bad nerdy card here. Back in the 90s, a little trilogy of books came out by Timothy Zahn called Heir to the Empire. They were Star Wars books, and they were amazing. But in the third book, Luke Skywalker fights a clone of himself made from the hand that he lost at Cloud City. What does this have to do with anything? It's the spelling of Luke. The Luke Skywalker he fights in this book is spelled Luke with two U's. So it's Luuke Skywalker, which looks weird on paper because it's.
I thought you were gonna say LUC.
Yeah, but they're basically, he's fighting himself, an evil version of himself. Basically, instead of having the Star Trek goatee, it's a name variation spelling, a way to say this is the same person yet slightly different. And so going back to namesake, this female Conann of two N's, it is Conann, and for all intents and purposes, this is a Robert E. Howard / cinematic Conann to some degree. Just that slight name variation that Italians just perfected back in the 80s.
And that's how I'm treating it too. It's going to be with my Conann library.
What's that?
That's how I'm treating it also. It's going to be with the Conann movies.
It's on my shelf, but everything's alphabetic. I don't have things together. So, but maybe I should parse it off. Here's the, Dragonheart's all in one movie, not six.
Last thing that I will bring up as we start wrapping up is that most of the actors in this film are female. Even Renoir, who is supposedly a male character, is actually played by a woman, a female actress that the director often works with. And that was actually very interesting. There were some men in the film,
but the men were feminized.
Mhm.
So all
That
the
is
characters
true.
are either women or men made up to be womanish, like her
Again, the gender bending.
right.
Mhm.
There's like men in like women's lingerie in a pool. Those are the capitalists. Conann 55 has like a assistant major domo or something called Octavia, but I think that's a man.
Yes, it was a male actor.
There's
Mhm.
what few men are in this movie are made to be women.
Yeah, it was actually very interesting. And it's for me as a woman, it wasn't something that I really picked up on until you'd have somebody like I knew going in that Renoir was actually a female. So then when Renoir showed up, and I'm like, that's a very masculine looking female, but sounds female. And then other characters like Octavia, and then just in different parts. But honestly, it was very interesting. So how that happened. But definitely a different kind of film for me to see so many women in a film and do really quite well. Particularly nowadays where you're getting more backlash about movies that are women led and they're doing very poorly. And I think this stands out as an example of one that does very well.
It can be said of all the movies we've watched for this program, this is definitely the result of a very singular auteur vision for sure. I definitely will want to revisit it down the road. It's not a back-to-back film, that's for sure. Where I think I'll be able to, again, I called it impenetrable earlier. I think I'll be able to get through some of the layers and appreciate it more. I do appreciate it. I really wanted to love it. And again, I think just inherently who I am, I'm, not a lady. I'm not an LGBTQ. There's this stuff that are just outside my grasp. But that doesn't stop me from. I would definitely recommend the film for sure. It's definitely a surreal film that definitely needs an experience. That's for sure.
Definitely a recommendation for me as well. I was actually surprised that I was like all in, and Nick was a bit more reserved.
Usually it's the other way.
Usually it's the other way. But I'm all in. I'm definitely go watch this film, but go in, just allow it to be the movie and just experience it. Don't try to have any preconceived notions. Allow it to just work its magic. And I think that there will be an appreciation for it.
Well, I want to thank you both, and I missed the part where you share your current and upcoming projects, so we have to do a special to talk about that a little bit more.
To be honest, Hercules, it's not much going on. Emmanuel book, mummy book.
Yeah.
Other things have just kind of been on back burner as we're just on that. So
But
but
next week is the 5th Tuesday. So if listeners are regular, then they'll know that Nick and I will be back on next Tuesday to discuss respective projects. Nick's, I'm sure, will be in the Toga Peplum arena, and I'll be somewhere in ancient Egypt. And we'll definitely make a point of discussing what we're working on.
That is awesome, and I'll leave you with something to think about till next week. I'm resurrecting the something like my old show, but not quite, because I'm not who I was 20 years ago. But in the same vein, so some of my co-stars and cast and crew are no longer with us, unfortunately, but some of them are. So I'm gonna try to get together as many of the people as are still interested. And I'd love for you guys to have a segment in that show. It's going to be different than what I did before, but the same. So anyway, more to come. Thank you so very much. How can people reach you?
I'm the easiest to reach. I'm at nickdiak.com. So you can find news, projects I'm working on, podcasts and vidcasts that Michele and I are part of, links to all the social media I'm on. So I'm pretty accessible.
Yeah, just he keeps a list of all the programs that we do. I do have a website, but I'm rarely on it. I'm just not a really big social media person. But definitely if you're trying to reach out to him or I or both of us, definitely look him up, and we'll respond back.
Thank you so very much. It's always a pleasure and a joy to be with you.
Oh, thank you, Hercules. As always, thank you very much for providing us a platform. And with that, we hand the torch of wisdom back to your capable hands.
Always good to see you, sir.
Same here. Good night.